the myth, the legend, Mr. Memphis Spence. I don't know how much you caught of that. And I apologize for yelling in your ear. Sometimes we have to understand the words that come out of our mouth.
Yes. Yes. They all have meaning. They
all have meaning.
They all have meaning, and if you start charging somebody with something, there's millions of dollars on the line with some of these contracts, and you start calling for somebody to be fired for cause, woo, and that's not something that is accurate. That's defamation 101, right? That's defamation. You're defaming this person. You're asking them to be fired for cause that they did something Title IX wise, and you can't back that up. You can't prove it. Let things play out.
You know what they do, Memphis? You know what they do, Memphis, when they're wrong? They use the First Amendment. And I'm not going to get into political. We want to talk football here, but they use the press, the freedom of the press, and they hit the soldier boy and they go, "You!" and they go right out of it, right? But look, that's neither here nor there.
I hear you.
That's neither here nor there, but we do got to talk about some football. Look, I got to ask you, Brian Kelly's doing a lot of things. You cover it nationally for people that are just tuning in. Memphis has been a guest of ours every other week. Brian Kelly's making a lot of waves. From you looking from the outside in, what do you think about the LSU Tigers and what Brian Kelly's been doing?
I like what he's been doing. He's been adding some solid coaches to his staff. Last time I was on, we talked about that. We're like, settle down. Just give him some time. He's going to, shore up the LSU. LSU doesn't really have anything to worry about. There are programs that need to worry. LSU, other than what you were saying about and I don't really, honestly, even with the NOA, notice of allegations, I don't think that there's that much worry about that right now either. And if there is, it's really only directed to Will Wade at this point, not to the rest of the program, from what I understand. Well, I'm going to keep my mouth shut about that. But anyway, see, here's the thing, because they're really supposed to be speeding it up, honestly. And, they have that new infractions, IARP or whatever they call it, where
it's like you can get insurance and you can get NCAA violations fixed
at the same time. You know what I'm saying? So, they have like a little spit, and from what I understand, there's really no appeal process with that new independent, and they put that in because Tom Jurich in Louisville really gamed the system for a little while. But they wanted to make it independent so that, longstanding coaches and people with a lot of moxie and pull in the NCAA system. And remember, Louisville and Indianapolis, where the headquarters is for the NCAA, are right there. That's why all that breaking cardinal rules stuff, they weren't able to actually get in there too often. But all that being said, I think right now, LSU is okay. And from what I understand, the Will Wade stuff, those infractions, sometime in February, they should have something, and it should get expedited before the actual March Madness. Now, that's just what I'm hearing out of Indianapolis. So, but right now, at this point, I don't think there's too much. I don't think level 1 or level 2 infractions are going to be levied on the program as of right now.
You do know that the people of Louisiana are going to call you Prophet Spence, not Memphis Spence, when that comes to pass, right?
No. I'm not a prophet. But I'm just saying there are ways that I've been covering like that stuff since the 2010 really, and there are little hints that you sometimes get from Indianapolis about what they're going to do, and they'll send out little nuggets or whatnot. Now, I know that they plan that with their plans, they plan on actually getting it done before March Madness, because they don't want another situation where you have like a Louisville situation where you have a team go through an entire process, win a championship, then tear down a banner, and then who won that? Right. We don't know who won that year, right? Because was it Michigan? Should they have won anyway? We don't know. They tore down the banner, and there's no winner from that year. The NCAA doesn't want that anymore. So they want people going in with full faith, that the committee with full faith, knowing that LSU doesn't have any level 1 or level 2. Now, if it's level 3 or level 4, those minor infractions, maybe, but the major ones are level 1 and level 2. And if they're gonna pull Will Wade's card, you'll know within the next 30 days, basically, because they want to give themselves time to make sure that the NCAA committee, in terms of putting them into the dance or not, they don't want to make that mistake twice. That's what I understand.
Very quickly, and I want to just on eggshells be very careful with this. In your career and your experience,
yes,
can you give us, to the LSU fans, about Wade and the Title IX or whatever? Can you give us maybe some of those subtle hints that you look for, maybe? So, like, as a typical fan, because Memphis, they asked me, right? And look, I'm not in that world. I might have a criminal investigation background, or dad's a cop, however it may be, and I might know what to look for. But what are some specific things that you look for in that, like an NCAA violation specifically?
Well, when I look for, like, how long they're taking with it. The longer they take with it doesn't necessarily mean that it's something bad. It's just looking for some sort of resolution. Case in point, I kind of knew that they had sat too long on the North Carolina verdict, and they were trying to come up with some sort of resolution. They're like, okay, they caught North Carolina with their hands in the cookie jar. Here are these fake classes or whatnot. What's the legal ramifications behind them letting them off the hook? Because now it's gone too far, right? So they were trying to really get their story straight in terms of what they were going to tell the media, what they were going to tell the public. And it came out to be, well, it wasn't really an athletic situation, because there were more than just athletes taking fake classes. So it wasn't really in our jurisdiction. Those types of things, when you start seeing them take a long, if they have the information and no new information's coming out, and they start hinting at, like they hinted last year around August, I think, that, this is going to, the independent representative, associate, whatever, and they're going to try and expedite it. And they also hinted that they wanted to have some sort of resolution before March Madness. They kind of said that. But now, here LSU is killing it in basketball, right? And they're like, how much money can we make off of LSU in the tournament? We expected Memphis to be there, but they can't get their head out of their tail. So, number one recruiting class in 2021, and they can't even make the tournament. Let's see. We gotta get LSU in here. The ACC's trash this year. I mean, they need that revenue. They lost that revenue in 2020, and it still hurt some programs. So I think what they're going to do is try and figure out a way to kind of polish this up and serve it to the media and serve it to the public, and kind of ditch or dodge, especially usually level 1 allegations. They're coming with a hammer, and what I've seen in the past with level 1, whether it was Baylor, whether it was Louisville. I was in Louisville for that breaking cardinal rule stuff, and when they came with the hammer, it was distinct, it was swift, and it was honestly with the intent that this should never happen again. And then they caught Jurich with his hand in the cookie jar again, and got the FBI involved, right? So, like, that's how all of this
undercover. The funniest thing I've ever heard in sports: planted an undercover stripper.
Yes. I mean, so they got serious with that Louisville program, and how they were kind of using funds to help recruits, I would say. So yeah,
when that came out that they used the undercover stripper, Memphis, I swear to God, I couldn't stop laughing. Anytime I hear the word undercover, I think of undercover strippers.
Undercover strippers. Yeah, man, it was a wild thing, and they tried to blame it on a really an assistant coach. He wasn't even really an assistant coach at the time. He was just a
DA or something.
No more than yeah, exactly. So I don't know.
Spence, moving to football, Brian Kelly, comes into the SEC. We had a championship the last time that we talked to you.
Yeah.
We got this on Georgia beats Alabama. Let's go to Brian Kelly first. I know we talked about the staff. What do you think about LSU in year one? Do you think that they could compete for the West, or are they a couple years away? What's your thoughts?
I got to see the roster first.
Yeah.
I got to see the roster first. Nothing. I mean, with the coaching staff, with Brian Kelly there, and it's LSU, you're going to compete. I mean, remember, this was a bad year, and you almost beat Alabama, right? And they were playing for a championship. So in a bad year, LSU is always competing. Maybe not at the level that they want to, that championship level, but they're always going to compete. Like your man said, man, if we got 11, we going to play, right? So if LSU is always going to compete in the West. Now, will they win it? Can they win it? Got to see the roster. I mean, Kelly's a mastermind at taking pieces, moving them from one place to another, figuring out how to maximize somebody's skill set. And he's going to have just better talent to work with at LSU. So this should be a good year of testing, trying to see whether or not, the other thing I'm trying to discern is how much film does Brian Kelly have out there? Because sometimes it doesn't matter, whatever Nick Saban's doing, he's doing something different the next year. Other times, there are coaches that have a whole lot out there, like Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly had a whole lot of material out there. People just watched what he did. He didn't really change it up. And so, he was on the fence there. I think UCLA just re-signed him, but they were thinking about not doing that because his stuff's not necessarily working. So I'm trying to figure out, Brian Kelly's been around for quite a long time too, trying to figure out whether or not these heady coaches in the SEC are, whether or not they're mulling over his film and what kind of different nuances is he going to bring now that he has LSU talent. But I would give it 2 years or 2 to 3 years. Could they? I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised in year one, but I would still give it 2 to 3 years before you would expect to win the West.
Right. And, Memphis, it's interesting you bring that up. Brian Kelly's never had a Keishon Boutte on the outside either. So right. that could be obviously and will be a difference maker. Memphis, I want to kick it around college football in general. Did two, and it's kind of we'll go to one and then we'll go to the other last.
Okay.
We'll go to the championship game last. Are you like me? Did this somewhat try to stamp not expanding college football? Is that why we saw maybe college football not get expanded because of the ass whippings that we just saw? I mean, look, I know that every time we have you on, we talk about playoff expansion, but for the love of God, man, I mean, what do we need to see? I love more football. Don't get me wrong, but we haven't seen a really undercomer coming up and winning it all. But do you think that's a reason why the commissioners didn't do anything with this playoff expansion?
Well, I guess there's the Pac-12 version and the ACC version, but basically, yes. Here's my take on it. And I said this on the show the other day. I've been stomping the ground for 5 years on this. I did the same thing with NIL and how to go about it. Me and some attorney buddies said, why don't we just let the market set it? And then all of a sudden, 5-6 years later, hey, we have NIL. So maybe this gets to the right ears. You have to fix the regular season before you expand the playoffs.
Right.
You have to. The only reason why we're having these blowouts and the only reason why we don't know who the top 4 teams to put in is we haven't fixed the regular season. If we get the matchups that we need to see during the regular season, the playoffs will be a breeze. We'll be able to tell whether or not an undefeated Notre Dame has played anybody. If they finish, as the number 1 independent and they play a couple of number 1 teams from their conference, we'll know. If they have both Clemson and Alabama on their bracket, we will know. Same thing with Ohio State. We saw Ohio State get beat by Oregon this year, and we were like, hey, because they played Oregon. So then we knew. we were trying to figure out, is Cincinnati beat Notre Dame, but Notre Dame's been fraudulent here lately, right? So we didn't know whether or not Cincinnati was a team that we're like, well, they finished undefeated. Here we go again with a situation where a good team finished undefeated, but are they one of the top 4? And you know me, I love football, but I hate watching bad football.
I agree with that.
I hate watching bad matchups. We just watched the NFL expand, and we saw a whole lot of bad matchups.
Last night was one of the worst.
Right. So we're like, well, what are we watching this for? I mean, okay, those players are playing for cash. They're getting paid money. If they get injured, that's part of their collective bargaining agreement, right? In college, man, there's some games we don't need to see, honestly. I know, I understand how college is developed. I understand that this is my argument also for even the FCS games. I don't need to see the Catamounts play Georgia. I don't. Write them a check. You want to put something into their program? Write them a check. Player safety first. Take that game. Let me see Georgia play Michigan during the year. Then we can figure out which one of these teams are legit. Right? I mean, I want to see more. At the end of the year, we shouldn't look at the SEC championship and say, was Georgia legit all year? We don't know. Who did they play? Kentucky and, Florida had a bad year. Tennessee still stinks. Who did they play? We're trying to figure out, are they legit or not? We should never have that question at the end of the year. That the question's never there at the end of the year with the NFL because they play each other. And I want to see either 3 or 4 out-of-conference games, actual matchups between – just give me the top 5 of each conference. If UCF thinks they're the championship a champion this year, go ahead. Put Georgia on the schedule. Put Clemson on the schedule. You run through those 2 teams, we now have actual evidence that you should be in. You beat Memphis, okay, fine. You beat somebody in your conference. But you beat one of those 2 teams, you beat put Ohio State on this, Oregon. You beat some of those teams. Okay, now we have sufficient evidence that you should be in this top 4 play. If you fix the regular season first, I have no problems expanding if we can't figure it out. But as of right now, I don't want to see bad football, man, and I know you don't want to either, Blake.
Newsflash, it'll be figured out. It will play itself out.
Easy.
So, look, to my surprise, actually – I came on the show. It wasn't to my surprise. Instead, that there was in the pregame of the national championship, Kirby looked different, Memphis. There was a different focus. There was a different intensity. I didn't know really what to put my thumb on it, but I thought that they were going to, I wasn't going to pick against Nick, but I was very skittish. Do you think after what you just saw and Nick admitting to him getting their asses beat in the fourth quarter, what do you think about Georgia now? Are they a rising dog, pun intended?
They've always been there. I think we started the season off with that, honestly. They've always been there. The difference that I saw in this game wasn't skill. The difference that I saw in this game was conditioning. In the fourth quarter, the reason why, Nick Saban was like, man, we got our butts kicked. If you started watching how the defensive line for Georgia, the difference, just look at the fourth quarter of the SEC championship game and the national championship and started watching how they were moving dudes backwards 3-4 yards into the backfield. I was like, this is amazing. They had to get on it in order to improve that much over 1 month. They had to really get on it in conditioning. And I give all credit, honestly, to whoever their strength and conditioning coach is, because that was a massive feat. They weren't tired anymore. They in the fourth quarter, they looked like they were ready to play. And in that was not the case in the SEC championship. So I think the skill set's the skill set. We know that from usually the beginning of the season. We see how guys play, and Alabama can always outskill you. The difference in the national championship game, to me, was conditioning. Completely. Alabama looked like they weren't as well conditioned as Georgia, and they got their butt kicked.
And Georgia running for 161 yards for 2 running backs. I mean, that's
run the ball. I mean, It was so simple. All you run the ball. You just had to. That was the weakness. That was the weakness that we both saw during the season. Run the ball. LSU almost beat them with half a team running the football. It was so simple. I was like, man, what? Why doesn't anybody see the way to keep? These are the ways. Honestly, that may be a way. Honestly, to keep Brady and this Tampa Bay squad at bay too. Run the ball.
Guess how the Saints are 5-1. Guess how the Saints are 5-1 against Tom Brady. They have over 30 rushes. And I'm not trying to go back, but sometimes you have to do that to win games. Don't let Bryce throw that sucker drop back 57 times. That's ridiculous.
The last black coach in the NFL has a saying: possess the ball. Mike Tomlin, possess the ball. There's so many. A mediocre Steelers squad can actually, compete by just possessing the ball, just keeping the ball away from the best player on the other team, which generally is the quarterback, right? So keep the ball out of their hand, limit the possessions, you limit the points. Sometimes it's just simple math. You give Brady 10 times to score on you, he's going to score 5. You give him 8 times, 7 times, 6 times to score on you. The score's a little bit closer. You do the same thing with the Heisman winner. Keep the ball out of his hands. Run the clock down.
Go figure, huh? I mean,
I don't know. Sometimes it seems a little bit simpler than people make it out to be. But
we've never built a NASA space engine, but we know to just run the football. Well, look, my friend, you've been awesome. We're coming to a close here on the show, but tell everybody where they can find all your stuff and everything that you're doing.
Sports Radio America, we're revamping the site right now. Next week, I'm actually going to be in LA. The NFLPA Collegiate Bowl is going on. I'm trying to isolate myself now because LA has much different COVID protocol than in Florida where I am. So we're trying to stay safe. We're trying to, be as safe as possible. We're going to go out there, broadcast that game, get to meet a whole lot of new people. We get to, rub elbows with some folks, see some really good talent. It's kind of the culmination. It's the end of my year usually. So, hey, thanks. Was that Gerald? Yeah. Gerald, yeah, thanks, Gerald.
I'm hesitant to put Shane's comment up there, but here you go. If that makes you feel a lot better,
Shane, man, you're my man. Shane, dude, you're my man. You're 100. Rick,
you think I'm joking when I say that you're one of, if not the best, the favorite AYS guest? I'm not lying,
man. I'm. Blake started Tell the Truth. Was it Tell the Truth Monday?
Well, that was Orgeron, but
listen, man, that's all I like to do is tell the truth. Tell the truth. I mean, if you suck, you suck, and if you don't, you don't. If you're LSU, then you're better than most of the SEC squads, even if you don't have a good season.
And if you're the FBI and putting a girl as an undercover stripper, we just got the truth.
Oh, we're gonna have jokes about that, man.
Oh, dude, I'm never letting that down. I promise you, I'm never letting that down.
After COVID is all said and done, or at least gets dies down, I'm gonna bring you out to the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl. We can get you out.
I'm gonna tell the wife that I don't have a choice. I legitimately don't have a choice. I mean, look,
I'll bring you out there, man. It'll be a good time.
I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it's work related.
I kidnapped him. He's on a Delta Express plane. Out to LA. Yeah,
right. Maybe I'll drive.